Hello, hello. Welcome to the Five Talents Podcast. I'm your host, Abel Pacheco. I interview the top commercial real estate investors and industry experts so you can learn from their experiences. So if you're an investor, a high W-2 earner, or real estate or tech sales professional that wants to invest in real estate without having to manage properties or leave your day job, then this podcast is for you. Or if you're already investing in real estate, but you're doing it part-time and you want to become a full-time multifamily or full-time commercial real estate investor, this podcast is for you too. You're going to learn a ton. You will learn from real-life multifamily investors and other professionals in the industry. They're going to share their blueprints for success, and I'm super excited that you're here. So I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, hello. This is Abel Pacheco, your host for the Five Talents Commercial Podcast. We're so excited today to have one of the first individuals that I really learned from a lot. I heard him on podcasts. I saw him out there, just very visible in commercial real estate. And Mr. Ben Suttles. Ben, let me first say thank you, man. Thank you for joining, brother.
No. Thanks for having me, Abel, man. I respect what you're trying to put together, and hopefully I can add some value to your listeners today, man.
I have a feeling you're going to drop more than a few nuggets, my friend. So Ben is, let me at least give a little bit of a background that I know of. And then, really, I'm going to turn it over to you for an introduction. But the reason I have Ben on, is the ideal guest for our listeners. He's a former IT sales, business development, sales leader, kind of the same background that I came from, in which I know a lot of our listener base is, they're in tech, they're trying to figure out, how to get out of the daily grind. And what a grind the sales part is, man. Here at a zero every single month. Month in, month out, you build it. One of my sales reps says you build a sandcastle and then every month you knock it down. And you're like, so anyways, that's Ben's background. He really management, sales, IT, all of that professional part of his career helped him propel in commercial real estate. And he started doing that in about 2013. So it's really been a very quick run to a large amount of success for you so far. But over the last, 7 years, Ben has been involved in acquisition, asset management, really involved in leading companies, businesses from an entrepreneur mindset and status in 10 multifamily properties. That's really $100 million of business, $100 million in assets under management. And they've done the purchase and so acquisition and disposition, however you want to call it. If you're buying new companies and you're selling new companies, helping investors get back really significant returns of over 1,600 doors. So that's a lot of real estate, brother. Ben, thank you very much for joining us, man. Why don't you start off, tell us a little bit about, in your words, who you are and what you're doing, and let's start there, man.
You did a heck of a job, man. I don't have anything else to say. No. I appreciate it, right? For everybody, obviously, listening, a lot of people are out there, what do I want to do in real estate? How can I get into real estate? And, how can I transition from that W-2 over to some kind of a real estate gig, right? I think everybody gets inspired, right? You get that bug. For me, it was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is you probably heard that more than once.
80-90%. You're like,
it's crazy, dude. It's such a light bulb, moment for me. And it happened back in 2012. Laura was pregnant with Lily and my daughter. And as everybody kind of knows, right, you got 9 months, how many times can you put the baby's room together? So I was, I was kind of old school. I was reading a lot of books. I started listening to some podcasts back then too. But at the end of the day, that was one of the books that I was just like, boom, I got to do something in real estate. Right. And, at the time, like you had mentioned, right, I was in kind of IT sales. We sold, stuff to the government, to Fortune 500 companies. I always kind of tell people, Ferris, who's my business partner at Disrupt Equity, he was the smart guy in IT, right? He was programmer, software development, solutions architect. I was the guy that was kind of coming in there and telling people how much stuff costs.
Yeah, they called me a sales Johnny at work. Is what they call. Hey, you're one of the sales Johnnies. I go, yeah, that's me.
How many of these things can I get, and how quick can I get them? Right? We we were the ones kind of, making it rain, right? Going out there, pounding the phones. I was hitting the pavement. I did a lot of cold calling for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
And, learned a lot about how to approach people, how to network, right? How to do presentations,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of boardroom meetings that I had to give presentations on,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that was it was a good segue into commercial syndication, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is what we're currently doing, right? But when I first kind of got into it, right, Rich Dad Poor Dad doesn't really talk about the mechanics or how to actually do stuff. It's all just mindset, right? So I kind of
Mm-hmm.
stumbled my way through it. I did some single family stuff when I first started off, back in 2013. Within about a year, I kind of got burned out. The problem is that, I was dropping what I was doing at my job, and I was driving clear across town. I'm here in Houston. Anybody knows Houston? It's a huge, not only population wide, but just literally, it's just a huge city.
Yeah. And a big traffic jam is how I think of Houston.
And it can be a big traffic jam. So, you're saying, oh, I'm going to go look at this house. And it literally, you just burn pretty much the rest of your day.
Yeah.
And then maybe you didn't win the house. Maybe it wasn't going to make a lot of money. And then I started kind of, just crunching the numbers. I'm like, man, and my time's not worth it. I need to get back to the office. I need to be making some sales. Right. So I started, well, I really want to do real estate. What else can I do to maybe tack a zero or two onto my paycheck for real estate
Mm-hmm.
and make it worth my while.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I started looking into commercial real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And,
Mm-hmm.
you start looking at, at that time I was looking at industrial, I was looking at mobile home parks, I was looking at office, all the standard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard Del Walmsley, and anybody that's here in Texas will probably know that's Lifestyles Unlimited. It's a guru
Mm-hmm.
group here in town, and he has a radio, or at least at the time, this was 2014.
Yeah.
He has a radio program. And really just kind of spoke to me. He's like, come on out, Thursday, free meeting, blah, blah, blah. So now I'm in the funnel, right? And I didn't even, like, I'm in sales and I didn't even realize what was happening, because you're just so focused on, I got to find something that I want to do. And so I went out to his 2-day, and, ultimately he gets you in, or it was the free Thursday night. Then they convince you to the 2-day, and then the 2 days a funnel to, buy into their preferred investor group. And I had dropped a lot of money, the year prior on
Mm-hmm.
Robert Kiyosaki's training group. And I was just like, I'm not going to do that. Right. So I took a step back. I said, okay, I want to do multifamily, because the first day of his thing is all single family. And then the next day it's all multifamily. That's where he's really excited and he gets you really pumped up about. So I was like, I'm doing multifamily, but I need to take a step back. I'm not going to drop another 20K on some training program. I need to figure out the pieces, right? I kind of knew some things that I was lacking, that maybe a partnership could kind of help out with.
Yeah.
So I took a step back and I said, well, I'm just going to kind of network, maybe find the right team. Right. And, so that kind of did that for about 6 months, found a couple gentlemen here in Houston that I was able to partner up with. And, right around that same time, I was at a RIA, which is called Rich Club here in Houston. And I saw Brad Sumrock speak. And Brad used to be Dell's guy, and then he started his own thing. For your listeners, you've probably heard of Brad Sumrock.
Yeah.
At this point, he was kind of small time in it. He was still speaking in a RIA, and there's like 10 people there.
Sure.
But at that point, his program was a lot cheaper than Dell's. It was, something I was like, okay, for that amount of money, I'll invest.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, I got the training, met a ton of great people, met a ton of great vendors through his program, and ultimately ended up doing my first deal in 2015, my first multifamily deal.
Yeah. What was it?
And it was a 92 unit. It's called Huntington Park. It was in Beaumont, Texas. And so for your listeners, Beaumont is 90 miles east on I-10 from Houston. And, it was a long story. I won't bore you with the details, but I kind of stumbled into it a little bit, underwrote the hell out of it, knew every detail of that deal. I sold the heck out of it, raised $800K. Yeah. And ultimately got it across the finish line with a couple of the guys that I had partnered with. Yeah. We had some challenges. It flooded during Hurricane Harvey. Luckily we had flood insurance.
Thank you, Lord.
And that paid out quite a bit. And we were able to pretty much update it from a C to a B. Sold it for a 365% return in a little less than 3 years.
Wow.
And so, you couldn't have really asked for a better first deal.
Yeah. The hardships you must have experienced, and you thought, "Oh my gosh, what the heck did I do?" But then it turned out great.
The person I partnered with really wasn't involved, and he was supposed to be the one that had all the experience, right? And so I stumbled through quite a bit of it. But you have to, I always tell people when you're raising money, it's all about confidence, right? You have to know your deal. You have to know your numbers, right? You have to feel confident in that project, right? Because ultimately people are going to try to poke holes in it.
Yeah.
And they might have some valid points, right? And you might say, hey, that's a valid point, but here's how we're going to mitigate that risk, right? And so, on that deal, I was just, of course, I didn't have anything else going on. So, I was 100% focused on Huntington Park, right?
Yeah.
And we got it across the finish line. And in the meantime, I parted ways with that first partnership. And I was kind of doing some more networking, doing a meetup here in Houston that I started in 2016. And that's where I met Faris Musa, my current business partner here on Disrupt Equity. And, he was just coming out. He was still doing some single family stuff at the time, but he was looking to step into multifamily.
Yeah.
And obviously I was looking to kind of get out of the other partnership, and it was just very complimentary. His skill set is different than mine. Mine's more kind of sales. He's more data processing, IT, that whole thing. And so it was a very complimentary partnership. And we've been off to the races since, man. Like I said, we've bought 10 deals. I've also sold 3. And currently about $100 million in assets under management. So it's been a fun ride. COVID's kind of thrown, I think, everybody in our business for a loop this year.
Yeah.
Right? We had some pretty ambitious goals going into 2020, and we had to pivot, in March to do some other things, obviously continue to grow and adapt in this new environment that we find ourselves in. But I'm hoping that, this quarter and probably going into 2021, we're going to see a lot more deal flow.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are still kind of on the sidelines, but, I think we're starting to see, especially if we can get through this election and the craziness kind of just disappears a little bit. I think you're going to see a calmer environment for everybody wanting to go out there and do some deals. So there's a ton of equity on the sidelines. There's a ton of people that want to invest in this stuff, because our thesis for multifamily was that it was always going to be in the hierarchy of needs, right? You've got water, you got food, you got shelter, right? And really this pandemic proved that thesis correct, right? Because at the end of the day, people prioritized the rent payments when they had the money, right? Over going and buying that big screen TV. So, and I think you can't say that about some of the other asset classes, right? Especially office, retail, hospitality is just getting crushed. And that was one of the things that kind of drove me to multifamily, is that I felt like it common sense. If you just take a step back and you're like, okay, we're providing housing. Okay, the government's my biggest partner in this. And they're incentivized to provide housing to people, right? They're not going to let that whole industry implode. And so if you just kind of take a step back, multifamily in a lot of ways makes a ton of sense. And that is why there's so much demand for it. And so that's where we've kind of, staked our flag and, continue to look for deals. We're also trying to get into development, probably do that next year though, here in Houston. Yeah. And, on the multifamily side, but that's my story, man. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. You have a lot of, so we have so many similarities. It's funny because I know you, talked with you, became good friends, that kind of good stuff. And I just general blanket. Oh, IT sales. Yeah, we're the same. Oh, multifamily. Yeah, we're the same. I also did Rich Dad Poor Dad's education program, and
there's a couple of us. I've met other people too, and I'm like, oh, we're alumni.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I also I skipped lifestyles because I didn't hear the radio program probably, but I did do Brad Sumrock's.
Hey, there you go.
Boom, started that one. But anyways, meetup. You started a meetup. I started a meetup. You found multifamily a few years earlier than I did.
Yeah, and it's all about timing.
It's just kind of continue on. But that's the cool thing about, being in an entrepreneurial mindset is you recognize, like I think I heard you say, number of different ways, right? You analyzed industrial, mobile, office, commercial. You decided on multifamily. There was a thesis that you guys created being, hey, people need housing as a basic need. So if I'm going to invest in something, food, water, shelter, pretty good investment spots. The fact that, the government's behind you in so many different ways, and you see it through the tax benefits, you see it from, the benefits that you get as an investor and an owner and, real estate in general. There's no matter what people say about the market demand, the demographics, what submarket you're in, is obviously real estate is very specific on that submarket, if you can win or lose. But if you look at the whole US, there is an increasing demand for housing, and the supply is not keeping up with demand. So if you look at an overall aggregate, you're swimming in, with the current when you're investing in multifamily housing, not against it.
You absolutely are, man. And there's a couple other things that are also happening too, right? And some of this stuff has been out there for a while. People are downsizing. People aren't getting into houses, as quickly as they used to. And getting into their own, being a homeowner is also more difficult. I always tell people it's easier for me to go out and buy that $20 million apartment than it is to buy my house. Mm-hmm. And I'm not joking. That's literally true. There was more paperwork. There was more, checks of everything that was happening, coming in, money coming out, than there is on a commercial real estate transaction. And so that's tough for people to make their way through that process. And so a lot of people, especially younger people too, are wanting to travel more, have, a little bit more freedom of not having to worry about, a house. And so all of those things are making demand for rental products just that much more, man. And so, that's why we love multifamily.
Agreed. And so you're an entrepreneur, business owner, and you want to carve that stuff out. The vehicle just happened to be multifamily. It was a great vehicle to kind of ride. But what was it that, led you from, hey, I'm a W-2, probably a good earner. I I made a good, decent grip of cash, but I had to say, no, there's got to be a different way. What was it from your switch that said, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to, buy businesses and figure out how to make it happen, partner, team, invest in yourself?
A lot of it goes, you got to burn the ships, man. What was it like, I don't know if it was Christopher Columbus or one of the conquistadors, right? He motivated his people to do what they needed to do because he burned the ships. We're not going home. We ain't going back, and I think I look at it like that, right? Like when my back is against the wall, I'm just that much more motivated to go out and make things happen, right?
Yeah.
If you got one toe in, how much motivation are you going to have, right? You can always take that toe back and say, okay, I'm going to go back to the safe, W-2, and so you have to really kind of think of it. Do you want real estate to be your career moving forward? And if it is, right, and I'm not telling people to go quit their jobs overnight, right? You need to have obviously savings. You need to have a plan. So don't take this the wrong way, listeners, please.
Yeah.
But once you get to that point, right, just go in. You're not gonna be able to know all the challenges and the risks that you're gonna come across, right? It might not all go according to plan, but if you really say, hey, I want to do real estate as a career, you're at some point you're gonna have to make that plunge, right?
Yeah.
And I took that a couple years ago. It's not, it takes a little while to work up to it, right? And I had already had some level of success, and I still was double dipping. Right. But I also get, 2 incomes. What's wrong with that? Right.
Yeah, what's wrong with that? The grind.
Each person has to make that decision on their own. Right. At the end of the day. And, but it's definitely the grass can sometimes be greener on the other side, so don't be scared to make that change.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sorry to interrupt in between, but that was exactly the mindset. Retreat is easy when you have the option.
Yeah.
And I think it was yes, to your point of burn the ships. If you haven't heard that, I'm sure many people have, but I think you can Google. It was Cortez.
Cortez. Okay, not Columbus.
And he is essentially went to battle, was going to take over new territory, and as opposed to leave the option of retreat, he takes all the freaking rum or whatever they had back then, and they light his freaking boat on fire, and his army has no option but to conquer.
You're moving forward. You're moving forward.
There's the conquistador right there, man. That's awesome, man. That's the mindset.
And me and Ferris too, another thing that we always kind of, we try to instill in the people that are here, right, is it ain't always going to be perfect either, right? Don't try to ready, fire, aim, right? And I think that's a Tony Robbins, saying, right? Just get out there and, take action, right? It's not going to be perfect. You're not going to know all the things that are going to happen. And yes, there is going to probably be some risks and some roadblocks along the way. But, a lot of people in this industry, right? They look at these big numbers and they get analysis paralysis. What if I do this? What if this happens? What if that happens, right? Now ultimately you need to take some, you need to mitigate as much risk as you can. But, when you're stepping back from your W-2, right? What about this? What about that? Get with your spouse or get with your partner and figure a lot of that out. And you're going to ultimately you're going to determine that a lot of the things that you're thinking is going to happen is A, never going to happen, or B, would never happen all at once. Right. Because everybody's like, oh, well, this is going to happen. And what about this? And what about that? It's at the end of the day, maybe one of those happens, but they're not all going to happen at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. And you'll get through it. Right. And so, yeah, I always encourage people if you're going to take it seriously, you're eventually going to have to make that decision.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to double dip for too long. Maybe a year or two you can get away from it, but your boss will eventually be like, hey, what the heck are you doing?
Unfortunately, I was just talking to somebody about this recently, maybe over social anyways. My last employer, unfortunately, they didn't get their best salesman in my whole career. Because like I was hardcore excited about commercial multifamily, and they'd say, "Hey, what's up with all these commercial real estate posts? Like, what's going on over there? And why aren't you promoting like my company?" I'm like, our company, right?
Yeah.
And maybe they never told me like 100% hardcore direct that I needed to stop, but they definitely inferred more than
they'll have that conversation with you, because you're going to be friends with people. There's going to be LinkedIn. Like at the end of the day, right, they're going to find out, and you might end up having to make that decision not on your own terms too. So that's why I always say plan to be careful ahead of time, right? Because you're never going to walk in and they're going to be like, hey, you got to go. You're moonlighting. That's against the rules or whatever it is. Right. And you need to have that backup.
Run hard. There was on the entrepreneur stuff. I co-founded a company when I was younger or a few years into my tech career. Really good business plan, really excited to get after it. Me and my buddy partnered together, and I was doing this on the side. I was moonlighting, and essentially we landed this really big deal, and it happened to be the competitor to the company that I was working at. And I said, oh shoot, this is probably the deal, of our business. This is going to make it. Let me kind of step to the side and try not to get involved. And that way I can cleanly say there was no conflict, but the business that I was working for, they found out and they said, it's one or the other. You got to leave your leave that spot company all completely or leave us. And I kind of shrunk down at that time. That was at a time where I shrunk down. And at this point I go, oh, I found a vehicle. I'm going to rise up and burn the ships. Right. So it was that move. You got to make those decisions from time to time. Hello. You're listening to the 5 Talents Podcast. I'm your host, Abel Pacheco. If you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you're serious about achieving financial freedom. Are you ready to create your own path through multifamily investing for yourself and your family? Then I know you're going to appreciate our Investor's Guide to Multifamily Investing. It's titled Tackling Commercial Real Estate the Easy Way. We use this guide to invest ourselves in $93 million worth of real estate. So we're going to show you the basic mechanics of multifamily syndications and how to evaluate your next passive investment opportunity. So the best part, if you subscribe to our podcast now, leave us a review and a rating. I'm going to give you a free copy of our ebook. So please take a moment to do that now. Once you've done that, go to 5tcre.com/ebook, 5tcre.com/ebook. Make sure to let us know you left a review and we're going to send you a free copy. So thank you so much for subscribing to the 5 Talents Podcast. We really appreciate it. What was it? You've you have a lot of success in your background, your professional career, and now as an entrepreneur, what are those things that you can apply, that you have applied, that helped you a lot? You've learned a ton of lessons. What do you still use today? And then how, somebody that's in the job today, W-2, give them a nugget so they can apply like what they're doing today to
I mean,
this.
I'll spin this from the sales background because that's kind of where I come from. Everybody's background is going to be unique. For me, right, sales, networking, doing presentations, that was literally, I mean, I was passing out business cards last 20 years, I mean, that's just what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, with commercial real estate, that's essentially what we're doing too, right? Because you're raising equity, you're trying to find investors, you're trying to find partners, you're trying to, put deals together. That's just part of, so that was probably, that's been the biggest thing that I've taken away from my sales and business development background, and kind of segue that into commercial syndication, where I'm at. But, I think it's also about, building teams, managing people, right? Which was something that I've done for years and years, and I think that that's important to take away too, because, as you grow, right, you're going to have team members, right? You're going to have, project management was a big thing. I mean, we put complex things together, at the IT company that I was at, and that's essentially what we always kind of say, closings and managing these deals, it's all project management just on steroids, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that are moving very, very fast, and you have to be able to move those balls in the right direction and make sure you get it across the finish line. And so that kind of skill set that I had has also I've been able to segue that too, right? So you can kind of start, and a lot of people are analytical. Maybe they know their way around a spreadsheet. That is also something that I had learned, right? And so I've been able to underwrite deals, pretty quickly, just because I had that skill from before. And so I think if people really start kind of thinking about, well, what have I learned throughout my career, or even college or whatever, right? You could probably segue a lot of that into what we do now, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like two totally different worlds,
Yeah.
right? Because at the end of the day, what I tell people is, yes, we're buying an apartment complex, but essentially I'm buying a business, right? And I have to be able to run that business, right? And I have to be able to manage people, and I have to be able to manage budgets, right? All of that is essentially what a lot of people do in their W-2, especially when they kind of get to our level, right? Middle, upper management, you're already doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you have to do when you're buying, a multifamily apartment complex, or even a commercial anything on commercial too. You can kind of step back and say, okay, hey, I can utilize a lot of these skills and do the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I would say that those are probably the main ones, sales, networking, project management, and, underwriting, right? For, Excel work.
Yeah.
That was all stuff that I learned 15 years ago. So,
yeah, absolutely. That's great to hear. So if you're listening to this, we have a lot of passive investors that are listening to this, and they're trying to learn a little bit more about syndication, investing, and how to put their money to work. And then there's also, I think, a good following of first-time general partners. I'm a brand new syndicator. I'm trying to figure out how to get my second, third, fifth scale to 10, right? So these are very practical, tactical things that a lot of people just kind of glaze over, but man, they're like, this is what you're actually doing, is you're buying a business and, figuring out what's my operating income and what are my expenses and how do I get more efficient and make it hopefully as boring as possible. Very systematic approach, and doesn't always happen that way, but you're looking to try to create that. And then if you can, man, then you can go do another one and another one and another one, right?
You're building out the process, right? I mean, it's all this stuff. Yes, they might be different properties, and maybe they're even different cities, but essentially the process is the exact same, right? So if you can kind of think through the workflow of all this, you start seeing a lot of, similarities between it, right? And so if you're able to kind of step back and kind of, chart this whole thing out, right? And systematize, and that's where Ferris is really, really good, my business partner, systematizing, processes, technology, and introducing all of that into, your syndication business at an early stage. A lot of this stuff is free or low cost. I mean, we were using Slack. It was, up until, 6 months ago, it was free. I mean, we ultimately bit the bullet and got the, a more professional
the
version,
pro
right?
version of everything,
Yeah, but I
right?
mean, like all this stuff, but I mean,
Yeah.
it helped it, and Slack is just one thing. We use a lot of other technology too, but
Yeah.
a lot of this stuff is stuff that both me and Ferris had known about in our IT world, that the Fortune 500 companies that we were working with were already using this stuff. It was
Yeah.
just, commercial real estate is still kind of, I would say an antiquated business.
Hmm.
It's very fractured. There's not a lot of technology. I think over the last 2 or 3 years, I've seen more and more, but I still think it's in its infancy in terms of adoption.
Yeah.
Right, a lot of people still do things the old-fashioned way, and I think you can differentiate yourself by saying, "Well, hell, we're already doing this over here.
Hmm.
This would definitely work on a syndication business. Why don't I try this?"
Yeah.
And that's what differentiates us, I think, in a lot of ways, from some of the other firms,
Yeah.
is that our early adoption of tech and just cramming it into every facet of our business.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll definitely have to get Ferris on. I think we've scheduled him soon for a podcast. We'll
yeah,
dig into those systems
he's
and processes. He's probably the right
he's militant
person to
about
ask.
that, man.
Okay, that's
Because
cool.
I'm kind of visionary, big
Yeah.
picture. Let's go make it happen. Let's call, right? And
Yep.
where he's just he has to rope me in a little bit. Have a process.
Yeah, I'm with it. So
Yeah.
on your area of expertise, right?
Yep.
For somebody that's trying to figure out, if I should invest, how do I invest with the right people? How do I invest with the right team? How do I even meet those people? I may know Abel and I heard his podcast and I'm from IT, but he's my only option. And how big the world is, people don't realize until you're in the network that like there's a bunch of people that want to do the same, that want to network, meet people. What kind of insights or advice can you give around like that? Like one, networking with people, but then two, the investment side, like money, dollars, my hard-earned income. I don't know
Yep.
where to put it out and how to, get the best return. Maybe just blend a little of those two conversations or
So, I
mindsets.
mean, COVID has changed kind of the networking environment, I think, this year. I think ultimately in 2021, we'll hopefully go back to, more in-person events. But I always encourage people, even if you just want to be passive, you're going to have to do a level of networking and reaching out and meeting people. Even if you don't like that, how are you ever going to find opportunities to invest in? You got 20, 30, 40 investors on most of these even bigger deals. And so these are pretty tight-knit groups of investors, right? So you have to be at the right place at the right time and investing with the right person to get into these deals. And so the more syndicators that right, the more opportunity you're going to have to put your money to work. So I'd always say that. And, I mean, we're also a co-owner of I'll shamelessly plug this, Multifamily Masters, which is a meetup, a group of meetups throughout the country, and we do a lot of online stuff, and ultimately, hopefully we all get back to doing the in-person stuff too. But meetup.com is a great avenue to potentially meet, like-minded folks, in these different cities, right? Now if you're in a smaller city, secondary city, right, and it might be a little bit more challenging, but once again, there's a lot of online events too, which is great for people. So you got to meet people first and foremost. Then
Yep.
it's a matter of, okay, now you got to vet those people, right? And I always kind of say, because everybody starts off at nothing, right? Zero doors, zero deals done, right? Me included, right? I just talked about that in my first deal earlier in the podcast, right? And, I raised 800K. How did I do that? Right. Well, I ultimately came at it with a whole lot of confidence. I knew my numbers. I knew that deal. Right. And so I wouldn't shy away from even the guy or gal that's doing their first deal. Right. But ultimately vet them. What's their background, and do they have any business background, or do they have any, anything that would kind of lead, projects or lead, teams. All of that stuff is a good skill set to have when you're doing multifamily syndication. And so find out a little bit about that, and then ultimately run the numbers on your own, right? Find out how to underwrite these deals. Most people are real cursory. They think that they know how to underwrite the deal, but they really don't. They need to dig into the numbers. And there's a lot of spreadsheets online. They might cost you a couple $100, but go ahead and
Well
invest
worth
in
it.
one.
Yeah, well worth it.
Well worth it, right? Because what I always tell people, you need to underwrite the deal on your own. You need to make sure that you're coming at least somewhat close to the conclusions that the syndication group is coming up with. And if not, you need to ask them why. Hey, I'm coming up with this number. Why is that? Right. And then maybe the syndication group can come back and say, oh, it's because we made this, and this assumption. Okay. Do those assumptions seem logical? Are they aggressive? Are they conservative? Whatever they might be, right? And then ultimately you say, okay, I found the right group. I vetted them. I underwrote the deal. Now it's just a matter of, do I want to invest?
Yeah.
Right. And, for most people, right, it's 4 or 5 pieces of paperwork that they got to fill out. Then they gotta have that old, press the button to make that wire transfer. And sometimes it's a little bit shaky and you're like, do I really want to do this? But ultimately, once you do it and you start seeing the level of return, then you're going to say, okay, hey, this is legit. And, I want to go out and make another investment. Right.
Yeah.
Or it might be your only investment. Who knows? Right. Just depends on how much, discretionary income you have that you can invest in this type of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the sequence of events, but people they're not going to be able just to stumble across a deal, or a syndication group, right? You might find 1 or 2, but you really got to network to find more. And you need because from a diversification standpoint, you need to have multiple syndication groups because, you might say, hey, I love Texas, but I want to invest in, I don't know, North Carolina. Well, guess what? You got to go find somebody that's investing in North Carolina. And so that's kind of what I always tell passive investors is that's kind of the sequence that they should take to understand the business a little bit better and ultimately into some deals.
And it's actually easier to do this today than when you first started. Much easier, even though COVID is a drag on so many different freaking levels, right? It's just a drag. I don't know any other way to say it. And if anybody has any, family members or friends of close to them that have passed,
no, we're certainly not trying to make light of it, right? But
absolutely not.
It's changed our business quite a bit.
It's horrible in so many areas. One of those freaking areas is that we can't get together. Once you start to know the world, like we have these really nice, big, fun events for the weekend, and you go and you learn and educate yourself and then network and pass out cards. And we're like in a group of like 500 people and the energy and the excitement, and we're all kind of doing the same thing. Well, none of that is here today at least. But there are more avenues to meet somebody on the other side of the world without having to take an entire weekend, without having to spend money for a hotel, travel, trip, flight, conference pass, et cetera, et cetera. You can go do this right now with the internet. And that's the good thing about it. So you can take a lot of time doing it. And most people today, because we don't have those big events, so we're waiting for the next big one to meet the next few hundred people, they're more eager, more happy to like jump on a call, jump on a Zoom, spend a little bit of time, to talk. So spend the time to network. It's super important. The point of that was if, 2012, even 2013, the Jobs Act, for those that don't know, it's like, that's the SEC's ruling that changed from the Reg D, 506B, 506C investments that you can actually advertise if you're a credit investor, you could advertise it. And then they came up with this exemption that says, oh yeah, you can have non-accredited investors in your deals as long as you have a pre-existing relationship. So prior to that, if you weren't in, like they called it the country club type of investment, private placement, memorandums. If you weren't in the country club and you weren't the $1 million net worth, and even back then it was also $3 million was the accreditation before they dropped it down to 1 million. So it was super hard to do this. And now they've opened it up and they've given, everyday average Joe like myself, to kind of go and invest in these vehicles, which is just amazing. So, take advantage of them,
And that's changing even more. The SEC is probably going to adjust that even down or make it easier for folks to kind of get in. I know that, we were talking with our SEC attorney yesterday. I mean, there's definitely some changes coming down the pipeline that's going to open up syndication to the masses even more than it already is.
Yeah.
So, it should make it fun next 5 years.
Yeah.
It's a wild west, my friend.
Yeah. Get it on. And if you, have that mindset of like, man, should I invest? Should I not? If you think about what's the alternative of not investing? Let me ask you first, Ben, too, and then I'll give my 2 cents. But I mean, what if people don't muster the courage up to invest and they just sit on all their cash in the bank account?
My grandma grew up in the Great Depression, and they literally hid money under the mattress, man. And she still remembers, she told me a story, with she went up with her dad and he was banging on the bank door and they wouldn't let him in. Couldn't get your money out, man. So I'm a big proponent of The stock market can go up in smoke. We saw that in 8, 9, and 10. People like Enron, who were fly high in the top 10 company in the world, went down to zip. Everybody lost their 401k. So the stock market, it's doing all right now, but talk to us about it in March. I think there was a lot of people sweating in March that this thing was going to go down to next to nothing, right? So instead, what I always like to invest in is hard assets, right? Because at the end of the day, you still have a hard thing that you can go up and kick the tires on. You've got the land that it's on, right? It's never, the value of commercial real estate is never going to go to zero, right? Even if the dang thing burns to the ground, I still have the land that it's on, right? Nobody can ever take that away, right? Whereas with a stock, yeah, that absolutely can go to zero. We've seen it happen.
You have an eccentric CEO that tweets something a little bit off the wall and people lose millions of dollars.
Or he gets caught up in there's a scandal, right? There was fraud. There was something else that was happening, right? So you just have to take that into consideration. Don't get me wrong. I'm in the stock market too. You should always have a diversified portfolio. Yeah. But my point is that if you can invest in something that's a hard asset right now, you can really maximize your returns on your portfolio, right? Because not only does commercial real estate never go to zero, right? But you also get a lot of tax benefits from it too, right? In syndication, what people are doing is they're buying shares. They're a part of a partnership. They get K1 losses and depreciation that can help offset. I'm not a CPA, but help offset some of their income potentially. And so and we have high net worth earners that invest with us just because of that. I need losses. What are you closing before the end of the year? Because that's the only reason that they're investing. Yes, they want a return. Everybody wants a return, right? But at the end of the day, they don't want to have to pay the tax man $200K. They'd much rather pay him $100K, right? And so that's kind of how a lot of people look at this stuff. So that's my investment thesis. Take it for what it's worth, right?
It's good.
But you can't keep your money wrapped up in a savings account that's paying you 0.04% per year. You ain't gonna retire. You're not gonna retire wealthy that way.
Yeah. So. I kind of I agree with everything that you've just said. So yes, I'm with you. And I also think about just the fear. At least I can speak for myself, my family, which was the fear of this cash that I had built up for some period of time in the professional world. I had it, and letting it go into an investment. My worst fear was losing it all, right? And if I lost it all, the thing that I would have to do is go to work every day. If I lose all your money, you're gonna have to go to work every day. But when I look at my parents today, they're in their 70s, and my parents go to work every day. And the hard thing the hard thing for me is to watch them in that scenario, because they taught me, save your money, AJ, they call me AJ, save your money. Let's try to do the right thing. Go to college, get your degree. You'll get a good paying job. We want you to have a better life. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. They're still working like today. And the alternative, if you don't put your money out to invest, you're going to have to do that anyways. So you might as well handle a little bit of risk. Get over your fear, get over your mindset, go educate yourself, because the more educated you are on a subject, the more confident you're gonna have. You're gonna be competent in the subject. Confidence, comes as a result of, and then you're gonna go do better and make better decisions. And so anyway, anybody hearing this conversation is a great one from Ben, and I really appreciate your time, man. So definitely. I have one or two more questions before you go, but before I forget, where's the best place for our listeners to reach out to you? So somebody watching this, somebody hearing this, man, they want to get in your world. They want to see what you're doing. They want to, go a little bit further, into the investment side with you guys and Disrupt and Ferris. Where can we reach out?
Well, check us out, disruptequity.com, just like as it sounds. And, I love talking about shop and just talking investments in general. So if they want to email me, it's ben@disruptequity.com. You can kind of check me out there. But I love talking about anything investments, multifamily, being an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
This is kind of this is the stuff that makes me excited.
Yeah.
And
That's
and
awesome.
helping people kind of get to the where they want to be. We all grow together, right?
Yep.
We're abundance mindsets. That's kind of where we're always at. I think that there's plenty of money and plenty of deals out there. Everybody can grow together.
Mm-hmm.
No reason to play it close to the chest. It's kind of my.
I've had more than a few conversations with other general partners, and they go, I don't think I'm competition for you. I'm not in your market. And I go, man, you're not competition in my market because there's no way I can buy them all. I'm just looking for like maybe one in the next 6 months. Anyways, there's so many deals out there. Like there's no way we're going to be buy them all. If I can, the last couple of minutes here, what is Disrupt up to today? Like I saw, pre-COVID, COVID now. I mean, I saw you guys in a bunch of different, or I don't want to say different, but just directions from a business standpoint. You guys are trying to grow a big business, big company.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we kind of took a step back, because of COVID. I mean, these were things that we always wanted to do. COVID gave us the opportunity to do them. So, obviously Disrupt Equity is kind of our acquisition arm. That's kind of, and you'll see obviously a lot of marketing. We'll be on podcasts. It's all under Disrupt Equity, right? That's how we go buy apartment complexes. This is a commercial real estate. We created Disrupt Management really out of necessity. I was tired of firing property management companies, because they were just doing a horrible job. Let's just leave it at that. So last year we created Disrupt Management and took over our assets here in Texas. We're still waiting to do the ones in Atlanta because of COVID. So that's one of our other brands that we're very, very proud of. And we're trying to kind of reimagine property management. And we've done some third-party stuff for some of our friends and colleagues in the business too, but we're mainly trying to focus on our own portfolio and growing it, organically through our acquisitions. And then we partnered up with a gentleman named Anton Matley, created a company called Peak Financing. Anton's been in the business for 30 years, Swiss banker, literally, the sharpest guy when it comes to debt that I know of. And he had been our mortgage broker on 7 deals and always under promises and over delivers. And, we were looking to kind of augment, the acquisition piece, with some of these other kind of, I would say, complementary businesses is kind of what we're looking for. And so, and Anton was looking to kind of grow his business, and obviously we have a big marketing arm, and so it was a win-win. So we created that in Q1 of this year. We also, we took a step back and said, what else could we potentially do? And we looked at commercial insurance. So we ended up partnering with a gentleman here in Houston called Dan Kaderka, who has once again been my insurance guy since I got into the business, best in the business. And we created a company called Strategic Insurance Group. And so those have been exciting to kind of see those parts of the world, because you take a lot of this stuff for granted, and then you're like, man, this is really complex. There's a lot of stuff going on here.
And they sure simplified it for you. There's a reason.
Man, I mean, I'm like, wow, okay, now I get it, right?
Yeah.
And so we've been, obviously adding tech and helping with sales and marketing and business development when it comes to that type of stuff, and letting those guys who are just best in business go off and do what they do best. Right. So we're just it's almost like the franchise model. We're going to bring the processes and the whole thing behind you and let them go out and be the operator. And so, we're looking to kind of do that on the construction side, as well. And so we're looking for any complementary businesses that make sense. Because at the end of the day, once again, like I said earlier, we're just entrepreneurs, and so, if there's things that make sense, we're going to go after them. And then hopefully, be able to kind of bring it into our own ecosystem, right? And, cross-pollinate those different brands, and you start getting economies of scale too. So, that's kind of what we're up to, man. A lot going on, keeping us pretty busy. We're looking for our next acquisition. We've been making offers for the last probably 3 months now and haven't been able to make anything stick, but somebody's winning them.
Yeah, they're starting to roll now, but
there's deals out there. It's just, we gotta land on the right one, and but we're being, our acquisitions have also changed a little bit. We're trying to go more towards B and A- deals, versus kind of the Class C value add. I think that there's still some of those opportunities out there. They're just fewer and far between, especially here in Texas, where there's just a lot of these groups that are gobbling up this stuff. So we're kind of looking for newer and nicer assets.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Well, that's awesome. Those are all great things. Thanks for sharing. There's a lot of stuff going on, and you guys are building a big foundation kind of continue growing, which is really cool. And it's nice to see the progression of, your business and, great things in front of you, great things in front of you guys. So congratulations.
Thank you, buddy. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Anything really left off that I didn't touch on today that you wanted to highlight, or
Man, we
closing
talked
words,
about
whatever?
a lot. Hopefully, I was able to kind of, provide some of, experience, wisdom to some folks kind of getting started. Cause all I just tell people, the most important thing is to keep taking action. Take that one. Don't get frustrated if you don't find a deal in the first month. It takes time. It might be a year. Just keep making steady progress towards your goals, right? And you'll be amazed. And the one other thing that I want to impart to people is set your goals high, real high. Like Harry, I'm never in a million years going to hit that, and you will surprise yourself every single time how close you get, and sometimes you might even end up hitting it. So that's the other thing too, is don't set your goals to something where you think that you can achieve, right? That's not setting a goal. You're already going to get there, right? Set something crazy, and then go after it, And so, and I've seen people make a fortune in this business, and, those are the types of people that I'm inspired to kind of be, and that's the type of action that they're taking.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Thanks a lot, Ben. Man, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate your time. My name is Abel Pacheco. I'm your host for the 5 Talents podcast. If you heard something that you like today, leave us a review. We'd love a rating. Hit us up at our website, 5tcre.com, and happy to help you. And Ben, you're the man. Thank you very much, brother.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Abel.
I'll talk soon.
All right.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the 5 Talents podcast with your host, myself, Abel Pacheco. Each week, we're going to bring you interviews from industry experts and commercial real estate investors who followed their dreams and achieved massive success. Before you leave, let me ask you a few questions. Did you enjoy this episode? Did you learn something valuable? Was your mind stretched to what's possible and what you can achieve? Do you want other experts just like the one you heard today? If you answered yes to any or all of those questions, then please take a moment to subscribe to the 5 Talents podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and most importantly, leave us a written review. Tell us what you liked, tell us your favorite guest, give us any feedback. I'm excited to learn and improve so you can get a more valuable show. So thank you again for subscribing to the 5 Talents podcast.